Welcome to everybody for this April 7th, 2020 regular Select Board meeting. And welcome in joining us on GoToMeeting or on PCTV, via YouTube, social media. I'm Tim Wessel, the chair of the board. And I took the liberty of putting that in my name. I don't know if that's presumptuous, but I thought maybe people who aren't used to seeing the Select Board might find that helpful. So just a hint, maybe Liz and Ian, you might want to put in your titles. I wanted to ask Peter, do you know if this has been properly warned?
Yes, the meeting has been properly warned. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first action of the evening is to approve the minutes of both March 17th and March 23rd. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from March 17th and 23rd.
Thank you. Liz has moved to approve the minutes. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And that passes 4-0. We are absent one member today. Excuse me. Chair's remarks are very simple and straightforward. There is purported to be a Chinese expression. I have no idea where it comes from, but it is the saying that may you live in interesting times. And I think we can all admit that we currently live in a very interesting time, for better or worse, and we should continue to support our friends and neighbors and family however we can. And thank you once again for joining us. I'd like to just pass it over to our town manager, Peter, and let him make a few comments.
Thank you, Tim. Actually, I'll pass on general comments this evening. I'll have a lot to say in a couple of minutes about COVID-19. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I also want to say that if for those of you who didn't join last time, we did have a special meeting last Thursday, which went fairly well. It was our first go-to virtual meeting experience. We have someone in the background, our very steadfast assistant town manager, Patrick, and he is going to be muting and unmuting people as necessary. The board generally is going to stay unmuted unless they need to be muted personally, to kind of keep the flow of information going on. But you'll see that as you join the meeting, or if you leave, depart and come back, your camera will be turned off by Patrick. That is to improve the bandwidth, to improve the people being able to see the ASL interpreters and hear us and see us clearly. And I will be opening it up to public participation. Have that as a separate agenda item for anything that does not appear on the agenda. That's when you can make general comments or questions to the board. And then I'll do my best to, during each agenda item, I'm also going to open it up for public comments. Okay. Right now, I'd like to open it up for Select Board comments and/or committee reports. Does anyone have anything to share? Any comments they'd like to make? I'm not sure there's been a lot of committee work since Thursday.
No, thank you.
Okay. Great. So the one thing I forgot to mention is that the chat window is open for your alerting me to the fact that you'd like to say anything, either during public participation or during one of our agenda items. And I happen to know that Millicent Cooley would like to step up and say a couple words about a very helpful program she's going to let us know about very soon. So Patrick, if you could help bring Millicent online, that would be wonderful. Millicent, can you hear me?
While he does that, I'd just like to advise Mary Elder that Patrick has struggled to turn your camera off. We're not sure why, but if you could do that for us, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, this is Millicent. I'm not sure. I tried to open up my camera, but I'm not sure if you want me to have that open or not, which is either way is fine. I'll just go ahead.
If you don't mind, I think it would be great to be able to see you, if it's okay.
Yeah, I just tried to click to show turn on camera, and it's sort of not responding very well.
The host probably has.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe Patrick, does Patrick need to allow my camera?
There.
I'm not sure, but
I am certainly trying, but I am unable to, so I just go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So we've recently formed a volunteer tech support team to help people during COVID-19, and the team is a partner to BAMA, Brattleboro Area Mutual Aid Group. Two or three of us are on the call so that we can help people with technical issues if called on during the meeting. And our hope is that, so the scope of that is only right now for this meeting for GoToMeeting access here and features. Well, the tech group is trying to help people with other issues broadly outside of this meeting. The way to call on us is to use the chat feature to open, to use a chat feature to reach us. On the bottom, you should select the name of one of the people on the tech team. I'm going to give you those names in a minute. Don't select everyone. Just select it. And the people you can see to ask for help are me, Alan Baker. I saw Alan came in and then he left for a minute. He'll be signing in. He may be having trouble signing in. And then there's another person a third person who's going to be coming a little bit late, named Steve Morlock.
Steve West?
No, Steve Morlock. The person, if you contact me, for example, it may be that somebody else responds to you and reaches out and tries to help you. We're all, the three of us, two or three of us are coordinating help in the background as a team. So that's how to request help. Let me know if there's any questions. Okay, Steve Morlock is online now. I see him. And Alan Baker was online, probably is back again. So any one of us can be contacted.
Thank you, Millicent. So just to repeat, that's Millicent, Steve Morlock, and Alan. Did you say Baker? Yes. Well, okay.
Alan Baker is correct.
Thank
yes.
you.
Yes,
the three
Alan.
of them are standing by. We are going to try it this time. Thanks, Millicent. Alan Baker. We're going to try it this time so that you can use the chat feature. I'm actually not sure that's the best way to go about it in the future, but it's absolutely fine to use that now. My fear is that if people don't do the direct message to one of the three of you, it'll start to clog things up when I'm trying to keep an eye on it for public participation in general. But let's see how it goes, because it's a whole brave new world we have here. So I'd like to also say, is there anyone else out there that would like to say anything currently during public participation? I don't see right now. There is a caller on the line, but I don't see anybody sending me a chat to sort of raise their hand, as you might call it. So Patrick, do you want to try to bring in a caller, or is there a way we can open that up and see if anybody needs to chat?
I wonder if at this point it would be appropriate
Patrick,
to
just
turn
let me
people's
know.
cameras on and allow them to like raise their hands, because some folks might not be as savvy with the chat box. getting some echoing on the audio as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's part of what will happen if we start to turn everything on, I think. Plus, we will slow way down. I see our ASL interpreter is pixelating, at least on my end.
Well, we have a caller on chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, I see that Kurt is chiming in.
Tim,
me
I've
see.
opened the mic for the caller.
Great. Kurt, can you hear us? This is Tim. Kurt, do you have, are you hearing me? Okay, I'm not hearing Kurt. I don't know if anybody else is. Okay, Kurt is having trouble turning
The
on
caller-
his.
Tim, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm getting a text from Patrick saying that the caller is not Kurt. Kurt seemed to want to come on to speak online, and there is a separate caller. There's Kurt. Maybe we can take Kurt's comment and then try to bring up the caller.
Okay, standby caller. I feel like a talk radio host. Standby caller. We're going to take a GoToMeeting comment. Kurt, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. This is now the public participation?
Yes.
It is indeed.
Okay. I was wondering if, I'm not sure if this comes in as part of the RTM agenda, but I was wondering if there's some provision for people to follow up on the RTM votes with their powers of referendum and petition that are, in the charter. Because we're having a new way of conducting our meetings. The people need a new way of doing their checks and balances on the RTM. I wonder if that's being addressed somehow.
RTM is an item on our agenda tonight. You saw that?
We can bring it up in. Okay.
Okay, so if I can understand your question about that, it's about the process during RTM?
Not really. The charter provides for people to ask for a reconsideration. That is, that they can vote on something or revote something that's voted by the RTM if they don't like what the RTM says. And there's no way now to do that really without, petitions can't be done in public.
Well, RTM, by the way, is representative town meeting, just so everyone is clear on that. We have that. We're going to discuss what we're going to do about representative town meeting and some of our options with that a little later. So I would suggest that I keep that question in my mind, and we'll try to address it during that portion.
Okay.
Thank you. And I was unclear, Patrick, whether Gary Stroud is actually on the phone call or if he is watching through GoToMeeting.
Hi, Tim. So one of the things we're learning about GoToMeeting is if you log in via the web, for whatever reason, I don't have the ability to shut your camera off. And so those images remain. Maybe, further work will help us to find a way to fix that. But for tonight's meeting, I don't think I can affect that.
Okay.
We do have a
well, we're learning as we go. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. We do have a caller, and I believe you said earlier that the chat indicated the caller wished to speak.
No, I was assuming it was Gary but Gary says that he's watching, so it's not him. So I don't think we have a caller that wishes to speak. Okay,
I'm sorry, just a technical question since we're getting our sea legs here. I don't know if we would be able to know that a caller wishes to speak. I think the way we're going to have to find that out is for Patrick to open up the caller's mics and find out whether they want to speak under public participation. Sorry if that's cumbersome, but
yeah. Okay. So shall we do that if we still have a caller? I do hear, I thought I heard someone. Okay, I think we're gonna move on.
Okay.
We are at item number 7, which is an encompassing COVID-19 update agenda item. We're gonna start with an overall update, RE time operation update with Peter.
Thank you, Tim. I'm not going to go as deep into the overall perspective about how town operations have changed during COVID-19, not as deep as I did last Thursday evening at the special meeting, because the tape of that meeting is available for people to view on BCTV, and much of what I described is available on the town's website in our daily updates and our timeline of actions. So I think that would be long and repetitive for people. What I intend to do is just say in a couple of sentences sort of the broad view of how town government is functioning in these times, and then provide an update of what's happened since Thursday. That broad perspective is that police and fire services are being provided 24/7 and supported as usual by the dispatch operations 24/7. But they are procedures for both departments have been modified to reflect the public health best practices, the necessity to protect both the first responders who are coming into contact with people who may have COVID-19 or have been exposed and be carrying COVID-19, and also in order to protect the public from the first responders as well, just the general precautions that are necessary to, since they can't maintain social distancing in all cases. In some cases, they can provide emergency services and maintain social distancing, but in many cases, it's necessary to have person-to-person contact. And so they're taking some special precautions, both with the equipment that they're using and with the procedures they're following. We'd just like the public to be aware of that. But if you have an emergency, call 911. Police and fire will be responding to provide emergency services, along with Rescue Inc. and other emergency providers. Our sort of intermediate layer of activity is in the field services that are provided by various members of the Department of Public Works team and the parks maintenance crews. So they are active, but practicing social distancing. They're mostly working as individuals rather than as crews these days. They'll go out, a single person on a single piece of equipment, and perform tasks that can be done by a single person that are intended to keep the community safe, both from a public health safety point of view and from a physical safety point of view. One of the important parts of that is, of course, we have the essential services of the water and sewer system that DPW needs to keep fully operational and is keeping fully operational. But we also, in the park system, in these times when we're needing to practice social distancing and be mostly just in our homes, it is important for people to get out, especially on days like the last couple of days when the weather is so much better. Get out and get some fresh air, get some exercise. And we are keeping the green spaces at the parks safe for that activity. People should know not to get on the equipment at the parks because we can't be keeping that sanitized all throughout the day. But we are keeping the green spaces safe so that people can come out and enjoy the parks and have that hopefully stress relief and a little bit of physical activity during the time when we are almost entirely staying at home. And the rest of town services are being provided almost entirely from our homes. So there's a wide variety of administrative support service that is the vast majority of which can continue as we provide it from computers in our remote workplaces in our homes. And then there are some other services, particularly in the recreation and the library areas of town service where much of that on a routine basis is provided person to person and in a physical setting. But both departments are finding lots of different ways in which to be able to keep services provided to the community and keep available to the community as a resource during these times when we can't have the library and the recreation facilities open to the public. So that's the broad view of how town government is functioning. And as I said on Thursday night, the vast majority of town employees are operating at or near their usual capacity in terms of the amount of work we're able to do in these unusual circumstances. There are some employees who are operating at a lower level of capacity compared to their normal, and just a very few, and I'll speak in just a moment about a particular situation, but just a very few town employees who are unable to perform services during this time. Before I talk about the one particular unit that's a good example of that situation that fortunately is rare but does exist in a few parts of town government, I wanted to just highlight a couple of items from today's update. The first is not particularly about town services, but is really important in the longer perspective for our community. We've been advised that in the early census returns, April 1st was the sort of official census day for people to identify where they lived on April 1st as part of the every 10 years federal census of population around the country. And we've been advised that compared to other parts of the state and other parts of the country, Windham County is coming in very slowly on that. And so we just want to put a reminder out, and I'll continue to remind in the daily update folks that I know we're all very distracted at these times, just coping with the current state of affairs, but it's important for folks to be responsive to the census. And if you find yourself in a situation where you, can't find your way to do that online, or maybe you don't have a way to connect and do that online, and you don't have the piece of paper that was mailed out to you, just be alert for when census takers contact for asking this information about our households. We want to all be responsive because we need a complete count of the population of Brattleboro and of Windham County for our area to benefit from the wide variety of programs, both the federal programs and the state programs that are population based. So for the whole next 10 years, the entitlement or the eligibility for certain kinds of aid to support activities here in our community is going to be based on our population compared to others. So we ask people to please be aware that it's important still to participate in the census. And I think I will leave it at that for update. Liz?
Tim?
It looks like. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I was a census taker 10 years ago. It's a very interesting process, but it's also very important. And I think now with the crisis that we are experiencing is a perfect example of why we need the census and why people need aid from the federal government. And so it's even more important and visually important now. Let's do it, and let's be counted, and let's get what we need from the federal government.
Thank you, Liz.
So,
Thanks, Peter.
thank you. Oh, it looked like Ian maybe has something before I move on into talking about the staffing.
No, I can wait till you're done, Peter. It's fine. Okay.
So next I want to talk about furloughs of town employees. And we've been becoming better aware of what the federal and state aid packages are going to provide for individual employees, as well as what they're going to require of the town. That is frankly still not completely rolled out, but we believe now it's fully enough rolled out that we understand the basics of how the program is going to work. Most importantly, we understand financially what an individual employee will be entitled to, and financially what the town will need to reimburse. And so without going too deep into the weeds, I want to just make clear something the select board is aware of and town employees are aware of, but the public may not be. It is common that public employers, that local governments and state governments are self-insured for unemployment insurance rather than purchasing insurance for that coverage. It means that on the occasions when we do have an unemployment insurance claim by a former town employee, they receive the benefit they're entitled to from the state of Vermont, and then the state of Vermont bills the town of Brattleboro dollar for dollar for that cost. That's a good way for us to approach this protection because it's not, unlike the many other types of town activities where we do purchase insurance because we will routinely, over the years have claims. We don't very often have unemployment claims. That almost exclusively happens in a situation where there's been an unfortunate parting of the ways, or where when it's more than one employee, it would most often happen during a very severe economic downturn. And so spending money year after year for insurance for a kind of coverage where we almost never have a claim is just not smart. And we budget a little bit of money each year. We don't usually expend that line item. This year, however, the addition of the better protections for employees who are going to collect unemployment insurance during this time, the increased benefit with the $600 per week that the federal government is adding to what someone will receive from the state of Vermont. We needed both to understand how that's going to work, and that it would in fact apply to self-insured employers as well as insured employers, that in fact town employees would be entitled to that additional benefit. And we'd need to understand whether or not the town was going to be obligated still to fully repay. In the instance where the town employees would not be receiving that benefit when so many other unemployed workers in our society would be receiving it, would cause us to be more reluctant to implement furloughs as a protection for the employees. And if the town were going to have to repay dollar for dollar like we usually do, then it actually financially would likely have been better for the town to simply keep paying employees, even those that are not able to provide services during this time. In fact, it has turned out that town employees will be entitled to the $600 federal contribution as a part of their weekly benefit, and that the town will, during this time, during the period of time of the special protections in place because of COVID-19, will only have to reimburse 50% rather than 100% of the benefits that will be provided to town employees. And the combination of those two things means that in certain circumstances where town employees are not going to remain actively employed and in service to the community during this time, that it is in the collective best interest of the employees and of the community and the taxpayers to have a limited number of furloughs. Our overall approach to this is to keep providing as much service as we possibly can during this time, and to limit the number of furloughs. But there may be some eventually within the general fund. Right now, we don't see a need for that. We don't see the level of activity of town employees or the financial circumstance requiring that. We did, however, determine earlier today that based on our now more complete understanding of how this is going to work, and based on the fact that the parking enforcement unit is fully shut down and has been for the last few weeks and will be for the foreseeable future, that it is appropriate, since the parking fund operates as a small business, it is an enterprise. In fact, in government accounting nomenclature, it's an enterprise fund. And the reason it's an enterprise fund, like our utilities fund, is because those operate with the fees for service, and in the case of the parking fund, also the fines that are paid, as the revenue source, like a business, based on sales, that support the cost of operating that particular service. So it's self-contained and it doesn't rely on taxes or any other support from the general fund. So in the parking fund, where revenue is now zero, and we expect it may remain that way for at least most of the rest of the fiscal year, if not all of it, we've done some early forecasting of where that may leave us at the end of the year, and we believe that it's likely that the parking fund will end the year in a deficit of greater than $100,000. The fund balance that we started the year with in the parking fund is greater than that. In fact, it was over $200,000. So we don't expect the fund to go into deficit and have to rely on a general fund subsidy. But we do expect that the operations of the parking fund will be in deficit for the year. That is even after we would not proceed with capital work, including the paving of the Preston lot in the springtime months. That's work that needs to be done. We believe it should be postponed, and when we get back to something resembling normal, we can make a determination about the right time to proceed and spend that money and make that improvement. But for now, with no additional capital investment in the parking activities, and by reducing the cost of staffing in the parking fund, we think we can contain that deficit there to something that's a bit north of $100,000. That involved, to get to that number, involved advising 3 employees this afternoon that effective Friday, they will go on furlough. We advised them, and I want to make sure that others are aware that they will continue to be covered by the town's health insurance program. They will have all of their other benefits, stay whole. One of the important differences of a furlough versus a layoff, we much more commonly hear the terminology of layoffs. So a layoff means that a person actually separates from their employment. The benefits stop. All of the employee relationship ceases, and the employee is advised that it's possible that at some time in the future they may be invited back. That is not how it works with a furlough. A furlough is a temporary period of time, an explicitly temporary period of time, where the employer-employee relationship remains, but the employee is not paid any salary by the town, but rather is in an unpaid status. And based on that unpaid status, particularly now under the special rules related to COVID-19, the employee is entitled to collect unemployment compensation. And then we will bring these employees back to be the parking enforcement unit again when we reactivate that activity in the community. And our expectation is right now our sort of uninformed target is July 1st, simply because that's the beginning of the new fiscal year. So the paperwork that we will file together with these employees will show an expectation that they would return to active service on July 1st. Clearly, just how the situation evolves in the weeks ahead, that'll determine how we actually proceed that way. So I thought it was important that there be a good, complete explanation of how this is working, both for the town and for the employees, because of the magnitude of taking this step with these 3 employees. There is a 4th employee within the parking fund who actually originally was in the parks maintenance team, and so is going to go back to parks maintenance for this period of time. So that'll become a general fund expense. It'll help us to contain that deficit in the parking fund, and it'll help the parks maintenance folks in doing the important work that they're doing and keeping the green spaces safe and dealing with the increased maintenance that comes with this time of year. Are there any questions or any discussion you want to have around furlough before I wrap up?
Ian.
Yeah. Yeah, Tim, I've got a question. Peter, so my question sort of involves furlough and also a little bit about the town employees you were talking about before. Do all of the town employees have adequate equipment to be working remotely, who are working remotely? And if any of them don't, could they potentially be furloughed because of that?
So there are a variety of ways. I can't really give just one blanket answer to that. What I would say as part of sort of the larger picture is there are many employees who are staying either fully busy or nearly fully busy, doing either their normal work. In many cases, the administrative employees are doing their normal work, and then other employees are doing some things that are sort of more special project related or otherwise things that are important to the department in the bigger picture, but not things that wouldn't be part of their day-to-day activities if we were functioning normally. There are some employees that are operating at a relatively more reduced level of capacity, and it is that group that we'll be paying attention to and communicating with around some additional repurposing. We've done some of that already. The most significant is to actually, have this custodial employee from the parking fund become part of the parks team fully. But we've got a lot of other partial repurposing that's going on with employees who are doing tasks that are different from their normal tasks. And they're still important tasks as part of keeping town government as functional as possible during this time. But there are some positions that we think, if this goes on just for a few more weeks, then we don't anticipate necessarily that there would be more furloughs. But if this goes on for many weeks or a few more months, it's likely that there will come a time when a more substantial number of people are just not able to keep providing service remotely, and we would expect to see a higher number of furloughs. So we're going to need to just sort of go day by day and week by week on making those assessments. If you have a particular question about a level of activity in any particular department, the department heads are, in the meeting and able to be activated to participate, and can speak with more detail and less generality to what's happening in any particular functional area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Daniel had a question too.
Yeah, I was wondering to what extent the HR director is supporting staff as they kind of navigate the unemployment system. I'm hearing from a lot of folks in the community right now, that it's not easy. The advice is to begin your application online, and then oftentimes you end up also having to get on the phone.
Yes.
And that's hard because they're experiencing huge numbers of calls right now.
Yes.
So just given that we have a HR director on board, like, are we going to support these staff as they move into their furlough?
Yes. In fact, earlier today, when we met with these employees on GoToMeeting to describe, what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it's only parking at this time, we want to make sure that employees were well aware of how this would personally affect them and their household, and also see how the decision is being made in the broader context of town government. The employees were, very understanding of that. We had a really good open conversation about it. And of course, they have some concerns as well about particularly the process, not so much ultimately what the benefits will be, but more the process. Sally Nix, our HR director, will be their full partner in this and was on the call. It was Sally and Patrick and I who met with the 3 employees on GoToMeeting. And we pledged at that moment, and it's a promise we intend to keep, that Sally will fully partner with them through this process. At any time that they need any assistance, Sally is going to provide that guidance to them and that assistance to them. And she has become the most knowledgeable person within our organization, as you would well expect, in the details of this sort of tricky business of not just getting into the unemployment process, but getting into it when so many other people are also getting into it during this COVID-19 period of special benefits.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Peter.
I want to say sincerely, if I might just add on that about Sally and about the importance of that role, and it could sound sarcastic or even a little snarky to people because of the context in which we created a HR director a couple of years ago, but it is completely sincere when I say thank you to the select board that supported that year and the recommendation to town meeting, and to town meeting and the community who understood the need for this position and supported the creation of it. It's not easy to create a brand new position and fund a brand new position and what that represents as a cost to the community. Having Sally on the team at this moment is enormously important to us as an organization, as an employer, and individually for each affected employee. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And thanks for taking that little bit of a dive into the furlough situation, because I think it's important for people to understand that we, of course, have to balance taking care of our employees and meeting their needs with taking care of the taxpayers and the fiscal responsibilities we have as a town. So it sounds like so far so good with that type of stuff. I think the best thing to do in the general COVID-19 discussions we're having, we have three points to it, and I think I should take public comment sort of encompassing all three so that we don't slow the evening down too much. And just to make sure everybody's clear, we're discussing overall update, which just happened with Peter. We're going to now talk about representative town meeting concerning COVID-19 changes. And finally, we'll be talking about any potential additional town actions that we might want to take in relation to the coronavirus crisis. So with that, Peter, if you can proceed with some RTM update.
Yes. So first, I'll answer Kurt's question as best I can, which is that to the maximum degree possible, and that theme will come clearer as I offer some observations and some advice about RTM here in a moment. But to the maximum degree possible, what we want to follow is our normal processes. They are what is set out in the charter. They are, in other cases, statutorily driven. They're the practices we follow because the law requires it, because that's what protects everybody's rights to fair opportunity to participate and affect the decisions being made. And so we want to deviate from that to the smallest degree that we can. And that is why the original intent, when we had no idea what the magnitude of COVID-19 might be, was to, at this meeting this evening, April 7th, have the select board reissue a warning for town meeting. Those town meeting warnings have to be not less than 30 and not more than 40 days prior to when the meeting is actually held. So it was going to be issued tonight. It was going to be for Saturday, May 9th. That would be 32 days away. That would be perfect timing. And it lined up with, back to Kurt's comment, lined up with the latest that a meeting could be held in the normal sequence prior to the beginning of a new fiscal year, that would allow the full timeline opportunity for the different calendared events. There's a deadline for submitting a certain number of petitions and a deadline for holding the election if it's a revote on a matter because of a petition that gets filed, all those kinds of sort of appeals and revotes that might happen after a town meeting. May 9th was a date of significance to us in that regard, but it is not practical for us at this point. And so that's why it's not on your agenda this evening, to rewarn. We have no reasonable expectation we could hold a May 9th representative town meeting. So there's a couple of different things going on here. One is the continued consideration of how to properly hold a representative town meeting in as timely a manner as possible. And the other is how to, we've opened up some communication with state government around this. We have no answers yet, only questions, but how to adjust timelines and or processes as needed in order that everybody's rights still can be fully protected. And so that might mean that we get into July and we're continuing on some basis, approved by the state that allows us to continue to function, but doesn't involve implementing an approved FY21 budget if it gets to be that serious and we're that far along and we still can't come together for a representative town meeting. Or it might mean that there's, let's say, hypothetically now, I'm not speculating on this, but just for a different timeline, different perspective, maybe a representative town meeting can be held in June. So it's plenty of time to have an approved budget before July 1st comes and we actually start implementing that budget. But it doesn't allow that full window of time for the appeals. So maybe the full window of time for the appeals is allowed, but that takes us on into the new fiscal year. And if there are appeals and if there is a revote, we have to deal with the implications of that in terms of how we would implement the decision made by the people. So step by step, we're just going to have to be sensible about what is possible during these times and these circumstances, and pay particularly keen attention to if we make any adjustments outside of what is the normal process and the normal time frame for these things, that we don't do that in a manner that empowers some and disempowers others. And to that end, my strong advice to you, and I expect that you may hear some different suggestions from the community. And I think we should have a good full conversation around the possibilities of whether there's technology available that I'm not aware of. But we've done a fair amount of research at this point, and I'm not yet aware of a way in which we can use a format like this to hold a meeting where there are 140 voting participants and another dozen or more active participants. So if we think about how this works, it works well enough for us to do what we have to do, but we're having some challenges even with a meeting with 5 of you who are voting participants and only a small handful of others of us who are active participants who don't vote. The technology that we're aware of at this time simply doesn't allow fair play in terms of how the moderator would manage the fair sharing of time for who gets to speak among 140 or 150 people, and then practically how voting would occur among 140 people in this kind of a format, when state law requires that if we're using electronic format rather than in person, that votes need to be roll call votes. And if you think about the number of times during the course of a town meeting when there's relatively minor procedural votes, say nothing of the important substantive votes that occur, there's just dozens of times during the day when the body votes on things, and when that's a voice vote, it's an efficient process. Calling a roll call of 140 people dozens of times during the day, I think is not practical. So our goal is that we keep looking at the possibility that there might be some tool that could facilitate electronic town meeting if necessary, but that be an absolutely last resort. And that in the meantime, we be making plans for as soon as it is safe and practical to bring the group of folks together. It doesn't have to be, in the BAM's multipurpose room or in the BUHS gym. It can be in some other setting where we can even accomplish some social distancing still on the downside of the COVID-19 slope of the curve. There's all these things we just don't know enough about yet to say exactly how that might happen and exactly when that might happen. But we have been talking to folks who control venues in the community that might be more suitable space for this meeting to physically happen. And we've even at staff level kicked around the idea that town meeting is usually in a cold time of year, the end of the winter in March. But this year it's going to be in a warmer period of time, and if we all keep our fingers very well crossed that it doesn't rain, it may be possible to hold an outdoor town meeting under a tent someplace on green space that exists that the town controls. That would be a very unusual but a very proper public setting for this to come together in a way that would be safer for everyone from a public health perspective. So my 2 cents for tonight is please just hang in there with this, and let's not try to solve it faster than we have to, because there's terrific potential that we could actually end up sort of harming the democratic process in our eagerness to accomplish the representative town meeting.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Well, I'll refrain from making any comments about how I feel it could be a bit of a nightmare to try to move representative town meeting to an electronic format. For now, I'm sure we might talk about that in the future. What I would like to do is just say 2 things really quickly. One is to remind people that the chat feature is very handy, but just please use it to only let me know if you want to say something at the end of a agenda item or during public participation, not to actually express views, because with open meeting laws, we cannot log that the way we can basically the meeting. It's not an open meeting situation, even if you're chatting to everybody. Someday in the future, we might work that out, but it's just too complicated right now. And my other thing is that I'm going to go against exactly what I was advising earlier, and just change things up a little bit and go ahead and take a question, because Millicent had a question directly related to representative town meeting, and I'm kind of hoping it's something that we can answer quickly or address and then move on to the next item under the COVID-19. How do you feel about that, Peter? Okay. So Patrick, if you could bring up Millicent's audio.
He did. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I thought that I read it at one point that the town was considering doing Australian ballot. And I don't know if you still are or not, but that prompts me to kind of say one thing that I really hope happens one way or another. I feel kind of strongly about it, that however we do this allows it allows all of the reps an opportunity to hear each other, because we learn a lot when we hear each other. That to be fully informed, about a democratic vote, we need to hear the responses of the other. And I know that this adds to the challenge that Peter was describing about, how do we do this? But that's a democratic principle I think that our whole thing rests on, and I feel that that's very important. To the side, I have, I'll send Peter or this and the select board, I have a private suggestion, but I don't know if it's a good one, but I will send that. I don't want to take up too much time here, but I just want to say that principle of hearing the differing opinions of our peers is really, really important to preserve.
Agreed.
Thank you.
May I speak to the Australian ballot piece? I'd like to just put that to rest for now. So,
Sure.
Millicent, thanks for that comment, because the special act of the legislature that the governor has signed that modifies the open meetings law in certain ways to allow these kinds of meetings that don't have a physical location just temporarily during COVID-19 also does allow for certain decisions that would normally be made in a collective face-to-face town meeting to be made by Australian ballot instead. And it's exactly that kind of, from just my own perspective and the advice I'm offering to the board, it's exactly that kind of a change that I worry about that would make it more expedient. We would potentially be able to stay on a faster timeline for these decisions to get made, although frankly, it also raises the question of how to safely hold an Australian ballot event during these times as well. But your point is exactly right about the importance for the 140 members of representative town meeting to be together, to share ideas, to collectively arrive at the place where they vote and make a decision and provide the direction to the town government. And that's exactly why I'm hoping that we'll go slowly towards how to solve these challenges and hold a town meeting this year, even if it means that we get into some pretty extraordinary timeframes.
Thank you. And I think Daniel had a question or comment.
Yeah. So the Vermont legislature is, moving towards remote electronic voting, right? And the House, I think, has probably a similar number of people to our town meeting. I'm assuming it's massively expensive and complicated, and it wouldn't be something we would want to do for one representative town meeting once. But is that a conversation that we could learn a bit more about from our local legislators, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. And from the folks who do the technical work up at the State House. Absolutely. There's a lot of things like that. I guess one other thing I'd like to make sure the community's aware of, I know the board's aware of this, but there's a lot of things like that we're exploring. And many of those things that we explore end up on the cutting room floor because we start finding out something more about it and we realize it doesn't work. But this is not, when I ask for us to move slowly together as a community towards how we can do this in a way that maintains a good democratic process, I'm not suggesting we just don't think about it for a while, but that we don't hurry to find a solution, that we find a really good solution that preserves the participation in the process. And you're quite right that the legislature is looking at that. I don't know where they are in their finding of solutions, but particularly, yeah, the House of Representatives is about the same size as our representative town meeting. And if the solution they find is not unique to their needs and very expensive to implement, then maybe that would provide us a way forward.
I also wonder, they're doing it right because they need to do it for a certain number of things to vote on. We have like how many moments during the course of the day where we're voting? We have like 20 articles and sometimes multiple votes within those articles.
That's exactly right. So it might work and it might not work.
Yeah.
But we'll find out more about it.
Friendly amendment. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, just when you think about how RTM goes with friendly amendments and then back and forth between those, it's a little more complicated than the legislature in some ways. In other ways, not. So, but definitely something to look into. I'm going to go against my own advice again and just let everyone know that a couple of people expressed excitement about outdoor RTM representative town meetings. So,
Tim, Patrick texted me and asked if we could allow callers to see if they have a question while you're taking public comment.
Absolutely. I was, as I said earlier, I was trying to push everything COVID-19 related. If specifically someone has a representative town meeting, let's just go ahead and keep it open. Oh, wow. I'm getting interesting things happening on my screen. Patrick, are you able to connect us with someone on the phone?
So, Tim, their mics are now open. You might ask them if they have anything to say. If we hear crickets, then I'll shut down the mics.
Great. Well, anyone on the phone, you probably heard that, but if you didn't, we're just waiting to hear if you have anything to say, and if you don't, we'll just move on.
I just want to say thank you.
Great. Who's this?
This is Terry Carter.
Oh, hi, Terry.
Hi. I'm listening on my phone. I don't have the app to do it on my device, so that's what you're hearing. My little
Well, we're
device.
glad that you're able to listen and even talk to us. So this is all new for us as well. So thank you.
Well, this is very insightful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks. I think unless there's anyone else on the phone that wanted to chime in, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe ask Patrick. I think Gary Stroud had something to say concerning RTM, I hope. Patrick, are you able to open Gary's microphone and/or camera?
His mic's open, and I've sent a camera request.
Okay. I think we might be able to hear you.
Well, as far as camera, that's probably 50-50, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I guess in reply to what Tim was saying, when dealing with these different types of apps, I found Zoom very prominent because dealing with doctors and stuff, particular apps, as we know, aren't compatible with a lot of the technology some people may have, old or new. Getting used to that now, doing this, because this is something I don't know if we've ever done before. This is a first timer. Also with the outdoor event as well too. In consideration, what you had mentioned, that might be a good idea, but just the venues that hold a large capacity of people within the area, where people can get to as well, might be a consideration. I don't know if you want to put a vote out for that sometime later on also, Peter. And I guess last question, Daniel, I've been coming across, I don't know, are we still in effect to come across a few people who are being put out of their apartments? And also I was dealing with Green Mountain Power about this is only a 1 month time issue with electric. After that, you have to go to your local areas that handle this, how it's being taken care of during this time now too.
Gary, I think I'm going to say that we can't really address your third question because I'm trying to keep it under our purview right now. We could certainly, if you want to send us an email, we're happy to follow up with you on either of those questions. But under your first two questions had to do with the representative town meeting. I'll just kick it off just by saying I'm personally familiar with both Zoom and GoToMeeting now, and I only trust Zoom about as far as I could throw it, which is about 1 foot. It's a lot of fun and it's more interactive and intuitive in my opinion, but it has some very well-known security issues that the legislature has recently discovered. And we are, just to reassure you, we are looking into alternatives that aren't outside. We have a couple of venues that have offered themselves. So I don't know if Peter wants to give us more info about that, but it's a little bit early for that.
Yeah, let's wait.
Up to you.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll be continuing to explore options. There's pros and cons to any site, and as we get a better handle on timing and when we're all going to be able to come out of our homes and be more together, it'll come clearer which site might be preferable.
Great, thank you. So I think we've wrapped up little discussion of representative town meeting. It's still a little bit of a floating subject, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with when things get back to normal a little bit. But now I'd like to just move on to any potential additional town actions that the board would like to consider. If any of you have anything to discuss under that, now's the time. As you all know, the town has taken quite a few actions that are within our purview already. Town Manager Elwell has written a very excellent summary of, it's almost like a diary of day one forward of a lot of different actions that the town has taken in support of our citizens and everything. Anyway, I'm just talking to kind of let the board think about if they have any comments here. So I'll just be quiet and let you raise your hand or not. You know, it'd be great if the board just kind of chimes in verbally, just because I hear nothing but silence.
That's fine, Tim. Yeah, I really don't like being on mute the whole time. I feel like I can trust myself to not.
No, don't be on mute. I think you should be off.
You don't want to hear me like scratching my hair and my microphone and all that. So I just kind of wanted to highlight again for the public some of the action that the town has already taken, and then kind of ask some questions about what might happen next in the wider world. So in the town's kind of position as somebody that has provided loans to local businesses, right? We have deferred payments on those loans, and we're deferring them. Peter, correct me when I get this wrong. We're deferring them for an uncertain amount of time. Right?
Absolutely.
It's not like we're not saying 3 months. We're going to follow the lead of our folks that are getting those loans, or we're going to.
So we haven't explicitly talked about how to determine the endpoint. What we have explicitly talked about is not to artificially impose one.
Okay,
so
great.
As things start to move towards normal again, there'll be a determination the board will need to make with input from the folks who owe the loans and others in the business community and others in the broader community. Will help you make a good decision, but it'll be your decision to make when it becomes time to pay the loans back again. Great.
So I'm really proud that we did that. I think it's an example of what a creditor can do, right? We've said that we support the people that we are, providing these loans for, and we're going to be flexible enough right now to say, we know that now is not the time to be asking you to be making payments. And I think that within our town and within our state, you know, that's the kind of bar that we need to be aiming for. My mortgage is with some bank in Minnesota that doesn't care about me. And I'm lucky enough and privileged enough that I have the money right now to be able to make my payments. And for those of us that are able to advocate, you know, with our banks, I think we need to be pushing as a community to, you know, to be pushing our creditors to say, you know, let's take a break until such a time as we know where we're at. You know, and I'm proud that like the decision we made about not pursuing any utility shutoffs, and you know, Gary was kind of alluding to the decision across the board with public utilities, mostly you know, electric and gas companies, to not cut people off right now. But you know, everybody's bills are still piling on in the same way that, you know, those loan payments that we've deferred will still be paid later on. And so I just kind of, I wonder as a community what we can do about that. You know, I work at SEVCA, you know, and we help people with electric disconnects, and we help people get fuel oil and propane. We don't really help people with back balances, you know, and people are going to have hefty back balances, you know, and it's going to pile on, and it's going to be hard for people to get out from under. So I don't have the answer, like whether this board needs to be, you know, looking at establishing a special fund for people to apply to, or whether there are other funds already in the community that can be, you know, flexed to turn into something that is appropriate. But I just want to kind of voice that, you know, the asking creditors to defer, you know, to allow you to defer your payments right now is like where I would like us to be as a community and standing together, right? Because we're all impacted, you know, and those of us that were in rocky situations already obviously are impacted more so, and have fewer resources. But at SEVCA, you know, I'm learning from middle-class families that have never really had to like deal with our benefit system before. They're all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, how does this work? Oh, that doesn't seem fair. Oh, this is hard to navigate. And that's what a lot of folks are being kind of having their eyes open to right now. And I just want to kind of voice as a select board member that I want to be there for people, all of our people in Brattleboro, and do the best that we can to, you know, to support us through this time. So, you know, a lot of hot air really, but I want to just kind of keep the door open.
Liz?
So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Daniel. I am really, really heartened by the work that everyone in the community is doing. You know, Groundworks Collaborative and BDCC and the Chamber and the DBA and everyone, but also our legislative representatives, because they are helping everyone understand what the federal government benefits are and how they come through the state. And it's really a maze to understand what unemployment is and what the small business are. And I think the more that everyone gets a grip on that and understands it, then we can see where the cracks in the system are, that maybe Brattleboro can find a way to assist. But I'm not quite sure that we're there yet, but I agree that we should all be paying attention to see, you know, what's available and what might be missing.
Yeah, thank you, Liz and Daniel. And Ian?
Yeah, I'll join in for just a second. Yeah, I just want to echo the comments of the rest of the board. This is a very trying time to join the select board, but I am very heartened by all the work that's being done. And I think I would just like to take this moment just to encourage people to reach out to the select board members. You know, our contact information is right on the Brattleboro town website. We are here to represent you. So email us, call us, let us know what questions you have. We can direct you to the people who can answer it if we can't answer it ourselves. You know, you're not alone. And I know that this is an incredibly trying time for Vermonters across the state. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Can I double dip? Liz,
Sure.
Liz reminded me, you know, there's a need for data. I'd like to think that data is being gathered through the BDCC. I believe, you know, there were an effort to collect survey information about kind of impacts and the extent and numbers. You know, like as a board, like it's hard to imagine some kind of relief fund without having a sense of what the numbers look like in terms of need. You know, so you know, I had a conversation with a local small business person today, and they wanted to see the board step up in a, you know, in a kind of an aggressive way. And also we don't know how much would be needed to fill that hole, right? And whether or not that's something that we can do, you know. And without the data, I really don't want to make decisions, you know, without data in front of me. So whatever we can do in this community to get that information will make me sleep. Well, I don't know if it'll make me sleep better, but I'll feel more informed.
Thank you. And I think I'll just chime in by saying, I think we have something coming up later on the agenda tonight that some of our landlords have their eye on. I'd like to take the opportunity to just say, I'm a landlord. I have 2 units that I own down on Frost Street, and on March 16th, 17th, what I did was reach out to my tenants and said, what's your situation? Because I know I still have not been able to get any feedback from the mortgage company, getting any breaks on my end for paying my mortgage. However, I'm trying to do that, and also checking in with my tenants about what their situation is. And they're lucky, and I'm lucky that they're retaining their jobs that mostly work in essential services right now. So they said to me, thank you for asking. It's good for April, and we'll see about May. And so I'm going to have that conversation again in a couple of weeks. And every landlord out there should be having this conversation, because why would you want to lose your tenants? That's a terrible situation, to be empty for a few months and someone, you know, can't have a decent home to be safe in when they could actually need to be quarantined at any point. This is a very serious situation for everyone in our community, and everyone should do the right thing, and that includes landlords just pushing the pause button like we all have to do on so many things, and talk to your tenants about if they're able to make payments and work out a deal if they can't. So there was, I wanted to be able to bring in Stephanie Bonin to make some comments. She wasn't able to make the public participation portion, but this is very germane to this agenda item before we leave the COVID-19. So if Patrick could just bring Stephanie up, either audio, video, or both. She'd like to tell us about a nice thing that happened over this past weekend. Hi, Stephanie.
Patrick,
ready
are you
to go when you are.
Thank you. I have been tenacious for the downtown community needs, and that is the need of having cash in hand right now. So I hear everything that you guys are talking about and hear Elizabeth's comments on where the cracks are. And we are about 3 weeks into this, roughly, someone can correct me, and rent was due last week. Bills keep piling in, and the business community has no income coming in, just like many of our community downtown, whether it's residents, organizations, anyone. So with that in mind, we created the 48-hour gift card challenge this past weekend, which was from 10 a.m. on Friday to 10 a.m. on Sunday. And the before work, which is actually just as important, was getting the businesses up online to be able to sell gift cards online. And so we had, at final count, 41 businesses participating, and over half of those businesses, we got them online specifically for that challenge. And so that will continue to reap benefits from many more years, as long as they're open. And so the 48-hour gift card challenge was created. The idea was that we need to help our community hibernate until they're able to reopen. And even the restaurants who are doing takeout, who are probably seeing 20% of their sales, that's not called being open. So when I say hibernate, I include takeout business in that hibernation. And so the challenge was created so that they could have some money in hand to be able to close their doors, to be able to pay the bills that just keep on coming even when the doors are closed. So the kickoff was a $5,000 match. And we started it off and said, 48-hour challenge to support our community by buying gift certificates online. If you're able to, we invite you to do that now. And an extra incentive is a $5,000 match, so that every gift card that's purchased can then become another gift card, dollar for dollar, and go to a family in need. I was definitely expecting to spend a lot of my time pushing that message out there to the world. And in reality, the $5,000 match I called after 4 hours, and probably should have called it after 2 hours. And so that was extremely amazing that we were able to reach that number so quickly. And several hours later, I got a call from another community member who said, I really want to extend the match with another $5,000 match. So I, of course, was very shaky and excited and announced that, okay, we have extended the match for another $5,000. So that match was also met very quickly. And for the rest of the weekend, I had 3 more calls. So one call was for a $1,000 match, and that was a family that has a second home here. Another call was another $1,000 match that was also from a family who had started out their relationship with Brattleboro through the SIT Graduate Center, and then has continued to have a second home here. And their kids saw it online and said to their parents, I think you can extend this. And then the last call was another one of our community members who had never given in this big way and really wanted to give $1,000 and extend it. So I get to announce the heartwarming, incredible results of the 48 hours, and the impact in total, which means all of the gift certificates purchased and all of the matching money, means that from this challenge, $57,503 went directly into the hands of our community, both family in needs, and then also the business owners, which is, to me, exactly what they need right now.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it was a great result. I watched it live as it happened, and I actually had to wait until just before Sunday to buy a couple of gift certificates myself. And So I just wanted to also let people know that it's an ongoing thing, right? You've set up a really nice interactive webpage on brattleboro.com, not to be confused with brattleboro.org, which is the town site. So brattleboro.com takes you to the DBA's site. Am I right there, Stephanie?
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, it's a great thing because that's what you need people to do if we want to come out of this with the same, hopefully close to the same town that we went into it with. We have to support people to go into hibernation, as Stephanie said, or make it over the gap, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's a great success story. Daniel wanted to say something.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Stephanie. It was really nice to see folks step up in this way, and I'm glad that funds are going to needy families. What I'm kind of curious about for somebody that works with needy families is how are you determining which families?
We're partnering with a organization that already gives food out to these families, and then they will be surprised with a gift card in their bag for
Which
probably
organization?
4 weeks. The Retreat Farm Pick a Pantry program. Pick up a pantry.
And how much in monetary value is going to these families?
Is
it like half of the 57?
13,000. I'm sorry, 13,000.
$13,000. And how is that being split up? Like, I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer on this thing because it was a great success, but like I'm also thinking about equity and wondering how this money gets kind of distributed.
Yep, $50 gift certificates.
Okay.
So each family gets a $50 gift certificate, and we partnered with an organization so that there isn't a choice. It's they're serving their population, and we are able to surprise them with a $50 gift certificate.
Okay. The $50 gift certificates are for where?
For everywhere that people chose to support.
I see. So if I got like $50 worth of books from Everyone's Books, then there's an equivalent gift certificate out there in the world.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Stephanie,
and if you $100 gift certificate, we would be purchasing 2 $50 gift certificates for your 100.
Stephanie, I just wondered, do you think you'll do it again another weekend?
I personally don't think so. I'm one of those people that I feel like momentum and energy and viral goes because of excitement, but I absolutely will tell you that we'll do something else.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
And
I did some Christmas shopping and
thank you very much.
Now.
I should have said that the first thing is that, I put the emphasis on the donors because that was extremely not expected and overwhelming. And I'd say equally not expected and overwhelming was the dollars that were spent both from community members and out of state people, friends of friends. So yeah, thank you.
And when I bought my gift cards, I thought about Erin at Fish and Chips, and I thought about Nancy and the staff at Everyone's Books, and I thought about Corey at Patio Coffee. And, I'm going to go to those places anyway. And I'm also thinking about these folks as, these are people in our community and they're having a hard time right now. It's interesting, as a kind of like a redistribution of wealth, right? Like somebody has $5,000 that they can let go of. Most of us don't. And so I would encourage people in the community who do have that kind of cash lying around that are ready to redistribute it to not wait for some other moment. There are plenty of people out in the community who have needs right now that can be met, and there are organizations, as you point out, doing that work. I work for one of them. So
yeah, and I also want your comments about a new population coming to you in your work is like that to me is so one of the things that I've been really continued to put my voice to is that, you know, all the people that are applying for unemployment and all the people that are applying for help with food, there is a huge portion of that who have never done this before and never asked for help before. And I think that we as a community are also saying it's okay to ask for help, and we're having to change our identity around that. And I what you said, I think there is going to be something that comes out of that, because we will have a lot more lived experiences in our community, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. And thank you, Stephanie, for the update. Great to hear. I think we don't have anybody contacting me via chat, or, well, we might want to just try it. I bet you Patrick's going to want me to try it. I don't know if we have anybody else on the phone. I don't think we do, actually, if I'm reading my info correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and have us move on. Oh. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody. But I'm going to move on to new business, which is going to feel a lot more like regular old select board business to people, which is kind of nice, because we've been talking a lot about stuff that is very strange to us. Let's move on to new business, and our first topic of conversation is going to be a grant, the Association of Vermont Conservation Commission's grant. And I think Sue is going to come online for us and chat with us about that. It's so great to have somebody operating the levers behind in the background.
There she is.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hi there. This is weird to be the first one with normal business. So I'm here tonight. The Conservation Commission wants to submit a tiny grant in the amount of $480 to the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions. They've partnered with the Friends of the West River Trail, who have the Riverstone Preserve along the West River Trail. And they want to do an interpretive. There's an existing trail, it's about 1/3 of an acre, and they want to do some interpretive signage there. So that's the grant. There's no match required. We just found out yesterday that they've pushed the deadline back, so the grant would be due May 1st, but that's what they're hoping to do with it.
Great, thank you.
Sounds like a great idea.
I don't know, $480.
It's an aptly named grant. It's a tiny grant.
Yes.
I am.
But it's a good way to get back and forth business. I'm sorry, Ian, go ahead. I didn't hear that.
Oh, I was saying I'm just very excited about this. As soon as I read this on Sunday, I got on my running shoes and ran down to see where it would be. My one question was actually two. One, Sue, the copy of the map is fairly low quality that we got for the select board. Could we get a higher quality one sent to us? I had a hard time really getting until I was down there where it's going to be. And then
let me.
Go ahead.
I will. I'll try to get you a higher quality of the map. It may have been because it was coming from my house and the scan wasn't very good. So I'll see what we can do about getting a better quality map.
And the second question was, is it only for signage, or would there be any work done to the trail itself with the 480?
Yeah, no, it's just for signage. It's the creation of the signage and the actual purchase of the signs and the installation, which will be done by the Conservation Commission and the Friends of the West River Trail. And I should add that Lynn Levine, she's a resident of Dummerston. She's done a lot of work in forests and trail. building. She's doing a lot of in-kind work for this. She's a member of the Friends of the West River Trail. So she'll be working on the content of the signage with some other people as well.
That's very nice of her.
It's a nice trail, and right now it's a very busy trail.
Oh yeah.
And I encourage folks who are using that trail to, you know, keep their distance, be reasonable. And also, oh yeah, and you know, if possible. I mean, I went up to Black Mountain Trail the other day, thinking that I'd go there because it's a little quieter, and that's run by the Nature Conservancy, and I saw that it was posted as closed. You know, so like, people need to get outside, and we're narrowing down the options. Not that the Brattleboro Selectboard has much to do with that, but just want to put it out there. You know, I hope that the West River Trail can stay open, and I hope that we can kind of be responsible in our use of it.
Tim, quick question.
Peter. Yeah.
I see on the graphic the website for the West River Trail, Friends of the West River Trail, and I'm wondering whether people can help themselves to a better quality map by going to that site. Do you know if this is posted there?
I do not know if it's posted there. I know that there are trail maps there, and I think the Riverstone Preserve one is on there, but I can check in with that and communicate with them.
Okay.
And ask them to get it up there as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shall I make a motion?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, I move to approve an application for a 2020 Association of Vermont Conservation Commission's grant in the amount of $480.
Thanks, Liz. Liz has made a motion to approve an application for a 2020 Association of Vermont Conservation Commission's grant in the amount of $480. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0. The hand does help me. I don't know, because there's always a delay with the audio.
I got this Australian accent, though. You should be able to tell.
Speaking of delays, my computer is telling me I'm a little delayed, so I'm going to need to call Comcast in the morning. But just let me know if I'm breaking up at any time, because I'm definitely having some speed fluctuation issues or ping rate problems or something like that coming from me. So our next item on the agenda is an ordinance amendment, and Peter is going to speak to that initially.
Thank you. So we're proposing an amendment to Chapter 8 of the Town Code of Ordinances. It's a very narrow, specific recommendation, which is that when people are hiring electricians to perform maintenance work at rental properties, regardless of how few units are present in those rental properties, that the electricians performing the work must be licensed. The reason for that is pure and simple safety. There's some inconsistency between the state law and the actually in the state law and how the town applies that locally and how it's applied across the state. And you have a memorandum in your backup from Brian Bannon. And there's also, I believe Brian's online tonight. I know that Len Howard, Assistant Fire Chief and Health Officer for the town, is online. And they can speak in greater detail to the need for this, what they see when they're out looking at rental properties in town. But basically, if you're 3 or more units, you have to get if you're doing electrical work at 3 or more units, you have to get a licensed electrician, not just someone who can do wiring. That's already required. And so what this would do is in Brattleboro, raise that standard so that even in a 1 or 2 unit rental situation, if there's anybody renting at any particular property, then at that property, electrical work would have to be done by a licensed electrician. And we think it's an important matter of public safety, not just for the owners and residents of those properties, but just in general to keep the community safer and protected from fire. Lenny's up, so I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Len. Did you want to add to that at all?
No, I think Peter hit it right on. It's very inconsistent, I believe. I mean, if you have 3 or more units, you have to get an electrical permit and have a licensed electrician perform the work. But in a 1 and 2 family home, if you have to get a construction permit from the state of Vermont to do the work, so it's up to code, and a plumbing inspection permit, but you don't have to get an electrical permit, which is kind of inconsistent to me. And I think it's very important that this type of work is done properly and not just by a homeowner that may think they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple things clear to anybody watching too, that this would not apply to people living in their own homes. This would only apply to units that were intended for rental or were being rented. Is that correct? And I've just got to say that, and it's up to you, you don't have to go into too much details, Lenny, but just confirm for us that there was recently a real world instance where, because of this sort of what I would call a hole in the coverage in the law here, we had a pretty dangerous situation. Is that right?
That's true. And I've seen it in many other 1 and 2 place family homes that I've gone in, of it being a concern. And I think it's just a safety thing that should be done.
Does anyone, any board members have any questions? I'm tempted to actually read it. It's not long, the portion. Liz.
Go ahead and read it. I think that would be good.
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
Reading is a good idea.
Okay. So this would be, I think I'm doing this right, section 8-32. I'm just getting a nod from Peter. Yes, great.
Yes,
A licensed electrician shall be required for the following types of work. 1, any construction not otherwise exempt under 26 VSA section 910, excepting that. 2, any electrical work in a building used for dwelling or residential purposes that contains 1 or 2 dwelling units, where 1 or both units are intended for rent. A licensed electrician will be required. That's the new language that we're proposing to add.
And may I just make clear for the record that Bob Fisher, the town attorney, wrote that language and has fully reviewed the reasons and the preparation for this together with the health officer and the deputy health officer.
Great, thank you. And since this is an ordinance amendment, this is the official first reading. I assume the second and final reading will be in 2 weeks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that gives people time to contact us with questions or concerns, and we can discuss it further at the, oh gosh, that's what I don't have as a calendar right in front of me.
21st, April
21st. Oh, there's a calendar. Thank you so much. Okay, so we don't have an action to perform there because
I have questions.
that's, oh,
We
sorry.
do have comments.
Yeah,
We got questions over here.
all 3.
Good, good. Maybe that's why I didn't notice. You all want to say something. Go ahead. Apologies.
Well, I'll start.
Yeah.
First, a question. Lenny, are there enough electricians in town? Is it going to be a hardship to find an electrician?
It's a good question. I mean, there's many independent ones, and there are a couple companies in town that perform electrical work. So my guess is there would be.
Okay, Thank you. And then I just have two comments. One is that it seems to me that we need to do this because otherwise we are discriminating on the safety of people who live in 1 and 2 rental units. And the other thing is that, you know, a town's major purpose is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so I see this as a vital action on our part.
Thanks, Liz. Daniel?
Oh, okay. In my research on this, I guess I was a little surprised to see that the Vermont code is kind of, I don't know, this is a hole maybe in the Vermont code. And I saw that some other municipalities had kind of had additions to the Vermont rental housing codes. Do we know which other towns or cities have done this kind of addition to their code or their code of ordinances?
It's a good question, and I'll get back to you, Daniel.
Thanks.
I'm sure the bigger towns similar to our size has, but I'll get you a definite answer.
Thank you. And then, yeah, I mean, the other question is just it's why, right? Why is this hole in our state housing, state rental housing code? Are we going too far by requiring this of folks if it's going past what the state of Vermont requires for code? I'm not, I don't think personally I would feel like that, but I'm just kind of wrestling with what it means to say, oh, our state code on something is insufficient and the town of Brattleboro needs to go further than that. I think all of the rental housing that I've lived in, I would like it to be safe. And I know that 50% of Brattleboro residents live in rental housing. That's significantly higher than our countywide, numbers and statewide numbers. So we're talking about half of the population of Brattleboro. I mean, some of those may live in 3, 4, dwelling properties, but I'm sure many live in 1 and 2. And I know that, many of our local electricians really, they take a great deal of pride in their work and doing it, to code and safely. And I just want to kind of make sure that we are doing our research about this before we kind of go further than what the state requires. And I wondered, I saw that the example of the Central Street problems was mentioned in Brian's memo. I mean, I don't need this information now, but do we know of other examples in the town where work has been done on properties that has led to unsafe conditions? I think having that information for the next time we come up to this question would help me.
The short answer is yes. Are you asking for more documentation about other specific addresses?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I guess I want to know, to what extent is this a problem in our community before we kind of, take this further step to go past the state kind of housing code.
So I think I'm going to echo Daniel's first question. I am also curious why this gap exists in the ordinance. I'm just kind of curious, and it seems important to maybe get that answer. And then the other is just on the numbers. How many rental units will this affect in Brattleboro? Do we know?
I can get you that answer too, Ian, along with Daniel's.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
We'll do a complete updated staff report so that in preparation for second reading, not only you have this information, but the public will as well, the answer to the various questions from tonight.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just jump in. Did the board get your questions answered to your satisfaction? Okay. So despite me trying to be a little clear on the chat issue, I have some questions coming in, which it's going to be very slow to try to bring people up to actually ask the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask them live on their behalf, and we'll see how this goes. Because it's pretty straightforward. Wendy Levy is asking, was the Brooks House fire due to electrical deficiencies? Is that a good example for Daniel?
The Brooks House fire was caused from a staple being stapled too tight into the electrical wire itself. So I can't tell you who put the staple in it, but that's what the cause of the fire was, yes.
Okay, thanks. And a question, I believe from Tony Duncan, I'm going to ask it for him. Is there a demarcation of what would be considered necessary for an electrician? Would adding a fixture like a light to existing wire require that? I guess he's asking, where's the level of electrical work? I heard someone ask if changing a light bulb, for instance. I think that was just sort of a snarky comment, but this is definitely a demarcation of what electrical work would be. Do you have anything in mind, whether like adding swapping out a fixture on a wall, if it's a simple procedure like that, does that count as electrical work?
That's a tough question. My concern is for an example, is one of the units that we're dealing with currently is a 1 and 2 family, and they have to change out the entire electrical service panel. And unfortunately, he's not required to have somebody that's licensed to do that the way the current state codes are written. So that's an example or a concern that I have. I wouldn't just want anybody putting in an electrical panel in my home. As far as just changing a light fixture and stuff, I did ask the electrical inspector today, state electrical inspectors, how far does somebody before they need to pull a permit? And he did say a light fixture or a light switch you don't need a permit for. So I guess you can kind of read between the lines there, but having an electrical panel put in or remodeling the building, or I think is definitely a need for a licensed electrician.
Okay, well, we'll try to get that a little more clarified. Can we work on that, Peter?
Yes.
I think it's fair.
Lenny and I have been taking notes, and we'll itemize. We'll restate the question and provide the answer for each one of these for next time.
Yeah, I mean, personally, if I was doing it in my own home, I would switch out a fixture. If I was doing it in my rental, I would just go with a licensed electrician because then I know it's done correctly. But that's not everyone, so we need to demarcate that a little bit. Great. Well, I think that's pretty good. I've asked for public comment and gotten those two out there, and we're going to figure out if that's something that we should do in the future. We're just so you know why I'm a little uncomfortable with repeating questions is open meeting laws is, it tells us that we want everyone to be able to chime in, but when you ask a question through chat, especially these couple came in as a private chat to me, not everyone else can see that, so I thought it was appropriate to actually say them out loud. It might not have been your intention, both of you, to have it go out to the public, but I felt like it was my responsibility to do that at that point because I'm conducting an open meeting here. So we're figuring this out. So bear with me. My family has texted me to say that they're out ringing bells, so hopefully some other folks are out there. I hear them in the background. If you don't know, 8 p.m., people go out and ring bells because they go stir crazy. No, it's a way to show solidarity with the rest of the community. It's kind of fun. The only problem with the ringing of the bells is when I'm ringing our bells, I can't hear the other bells. So I haven't figured out that problem yet. You got a bell with you? Oh yeah, nice. Let's see. We are on to new business item C, and that is totally getting to a few things of board business here. Every year we go over our rules of conduct, and Ian, this is your first time looking at the rules of conduct. All of us have seen it at least once, but that's certainly not something I'm going to read out loud. But does anybody want to chime in with any questions or comments about? They have not changed since last year when they were approved by the previous board. Trying to give you the total of, it's 4 pages. So that's why I'm not going to read it. Any
Maybe
comments?
there needs to be an addendum for how to conduct meetings online.
Certainly. That'll be another.
I'm half joking because I saw Wendy's comment in the chat just now. Like, we don't have the parameters kind of exactly spelled out clearly for everybody, so it makes it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, and I just saw that chat because I was so interested in talking myself that it was hard for me to do both at the same time. But just to reiterate the chat, we just want people to use the chat as sort of a hand-raising situation rather than ask direct questions, because either the people watching through BCTV or other methods on the phone, they're not going to be able to see or understand that question is being asked. And certainly if it's a private chat, no one will see it. So I'll feel forced to actually ask you, call it out, even if you didn't intend it to be called out. So anyway, the chat feature should be used just to say, I have a question, simply that. Daniel?
Maybe we could write that stuff down and just make it available with the link and the call-in, just like a few kind of simple bits of protocol.
Absolutely.
Just so people know what they're getting into.
Yep. If it's acceptable to the board, I'll just work together with Tim on that, since he's the one who has to navigate this and keep control of the meeting, and then we'll put some bullets down in the information that goes out to the community before the next meeting.
We're unanimously nodding, Peter.
Thank you.
Let it be noted for the record.
Thank you, and thank you to Wendy. Thanks to Wendy for bringing that up, and also to Patrick, who actually attempted to write that stuff down, but I don't think it's all come together yet, being our second meeting only.
As to the rules of conduct, I'm happy with them. Does anyone have any other comments?
Yeah, I've got just a newbie question and a comment. I mean, I love reading rules, but I did find I think I wanted just to double check it, which is why my screen keeps changing. For in section E2, talking about the agenda and how to get items on the agenda. I had to go back and reread that section multiple times to make sure I understood it exactly, which, I'm not proposing any kind of change to it, but just as someone who's putting new eyes on the rules, I would say that is a section that sort of drew my attention as being a little clunky. And the question actually comes from that. As I understand it, the board through a majority can agree during a select board meeting to put an agenda item on for the next week, could a public participant request the board during public comment to put something on the agenda and then the board agree to it in a majority during the meeting? Is that an avenue that a public participant could use to get an agenda item put on the agenda for the next meeting?
Not traditionally, right? Peter, you want to?
So yeah, what I would say is it is definitively fair game for a member of the public to speak about any topic. I mean, that's what public participation exists for. It remains at the discretion of the board whether or not to hear it as a formal action item of the board. And what I've seen more typically, it can happen the way you described, Ian. It also can happen during the course of a meeting, just discussing some other substantive matter that's on, say, tonight's agenda, that three of you might say, we should really discuss that aspect of this thing further, and let's have that be its own item next time. So the board certainly always has the ability to decide that some topic is going to be an agenda item for a future meeting. It has been more common over the years, and it's also been my experience more commonly in the other communities that I've served, that because public participation represents an opportunity for every individual in the community to say their piece, that boards will often receive input. They're being urged to take some kind of future action and take it under advisement. And then the chair and the vice chair might decide to put it on a future agenda. A board member might say, hey, whatever happened to when so-and-so asked us about such and such?
Yeah.
But it hasn't been standard to receive a comment from an individual member of the community and then say that becomes the select board's business the next meeting by any kind of sort of commonly held expectation. It's very much been a case-by-case basis, and it's been unusual that something like that would get set immediately for the next meeting rather than just taken under consideration by the board.
Okay, I really appreciate the clarification. I think I just wanted to take some time to just, as I was reading that, to let our everyone know who's watching how you actually, if you wanted to get something on the agenda, you got to put something in writing the Tuesday before noon. So I was just wanting to explore if there were alternative ways, but I think that does answer my question, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, and I'm not closing off the discussion by any means, but I'll just add that it does happen that we turn to each other and say, oh, that's a no-brainer. We should put it on on the next meeting warning. But more often than not, asking for it to be formalized, like checking in with Peter and having a discussion first, totally changes the request and changes the ask into something that, once you get more information, you have a question, you want to talk about something, but then you receive a piece of information that really changes the whole direction. And having a little bit of a buffer saves us gobs of time with just, having to talk about something that either isn't in our purview or isn't relevant for one reason or another. So it's a little bit more efficient to have a more take a question to the town manager. I see your hand, Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to put it in the right spot where it's in the screen. So just a little bit more, that's helpful. Actually, I'm glad you said that, Tim. It reminds me of something that I think also would be helpful to you, Ian, and hopefully to members of the public that are listening. It's really common in those situations that the board turns to me and asks for staff to provide some additional information to help you decide whether or not you think something needs to be a select board item. And so what we'll do in those kinds of situations is we'll advise the board further and the person who raised the issue so that they know what the board is being advised. And sometimes those things come back again on another night, and sometimes they don't.
Or sometimes the person's question is answered.
That's right.
Ideally.
Yeah.
I have a
Just
question
circling
about
back. Oh, yeah.
signing things like, warrants. What is our procedure for warrants right now?
We will be doing that by PDF. So the finance folks will prepare the warrants as usual. That's one of the few tasks that is still going on in the offices, is coming in and running, printing off the checks to be mailed to pay bills. And, there's some equipment here that needs to be used for that and for payroll. So there's some 2 employees in the finance department that are coming in occasionally doing that work for us. And when the warrant list for a particular week is complete, they will email the PDF to me and to whichever one of you is signing at that time. And our email response to say it's approved will be sufficient. That all of that will be actually printed off and put in the files so that it's there for the auditors to see that even though we couldn't put a signature on it, we actually did go through the normal approval process. And obviously, if you have a question along the way before you're ready to approve it, you can direct that to me or you can direct it to finance and we'll get you an answer before you send your email approval.
Okay. What was I going to say? I just was reminded of like the term warrants and how probably the vast majority of people watching this are like, warrants? And when we talk about signing warrants, we're not talking about warrants for people's
we sure aren't.
arrests or what have you.
I think it's that
talking
cowboy
about
bandana you're wearing.
things we have to pay checks for. This is my Pisgah State Park ultra marathon bandana. I didn't run it. I just volunteered. Not too long.
So if everyone's fairly satisfied with that, I would welcome a motion.
I'll move.
Okay, go right ahead.
From the administrative report. Ian?
This is where you need to have multiple windows open all at once.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
I wanted to make sure you knew that there's a proposed motion in the administrative report.
Yeah, I was going to use it for the first time. So I so move to approve the rules for conduct of meetings and hearings.
Thank you. Ian has moved to approve the rules for conduct of meetings and hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 4. Thank you. You have approved that set of rules. Next, we just want to talk about, guess what? Warrants. That flows very nicely. When we sign warrants, which are basically, we still say it's losing all meaning now because I keep saying the word over and over again. But these are basically the authorizations for expenditures, checks, etc. We take turns in our board, usually nicely, about signing the warrants, and we have a rotation schedule, which the board members have in front of them. And this is just a boring bit of board business that we do. I have a certain time period that I always like to do. Daniel's shaking his head.
No, I think thinking about the future now is no longer boring. I'm looking at these dates. I'm like, what will be happening on June 8th? I have no idea.
So true.
Well, you'll still have to sign warrants.
I might choose not to. I might choose to take a later date.
Or email your approval.
Yes.
Now, that's true. We're going to be able to do even warrants with PDFs? Okay.
That's what we're going to be
Just
doing
doesn't
for
feel
now. We've cleared that with the auditors, that's sufficient for now when it's not safe to be passing around pieces of paper.
Great.
Great. So we have these, does anybody have a preference of where they are?
I have no preference, so if anyone does have a preference, go right ahead.
Okay, I have a preference.
Go right ahead.
I like November, December 31st because I tend to be, because of my work schedule, I tend to be more likely to be around then. But of course, with PDFs, who knows? I'm really hoping by November 2, though, we're going to be signing these things in person again. So I'm going to just say that, and that's what's going to happen, I'm sure. Anybody want to take April 1st, which would include, now? No. Okay. Liz or Ian?
I will take the first shift.
Good for you. Brandy's not here, so she's going to end up with the last chosen one. June 8th to August 21st.
I'll do that. Unless
Great.
Daniel
That
wants it.
includes
No, I'm holding out for a later one.
Okay.
because you really want to do that.
I want to go and hang out with Jan and talk to Jan about what's going on, and
absolutely.
You can't do that online. I mean, I guess I could give Jan a call, but it's not quite the same.
You can't hit Jan's candy bowl online.
True.
January 4th to March 19th is Daniel's then, I assume?
I was going to do like the August one. Did you take the August one?
No,
Didn't I?
you said later, so I was giving you the last one.
I thought Elizabeth was doing June to August. I'll do
That's
August to October. I'm hedging. I'm saying by August, I'm going to be able to go back into the municipal center and hang out with Jan every Friday morning.
Yes.
Good. So we will assign Brandy to January 4th to March 19th. And I'm sure she
You know
will
what they would say
graciously-
in New Jersey? They'd say, from your lips to God's ears.
It's been a
Some
while
people
since
might
I've
say
heard that one. Okay, where are we? I had to actually write something down in this digital age. It threw me off. We actually have possibly Sue with us again for our next. Oh no, wait! I'm sorry, I'm skipping something. We need to talk about annual select board appointments for committees and boards. And this is very important. So the select board serves on various committees and boards, and this is when we duke it out for who gets to serve on what. I have some added duties now, so I am hoping to step away from my duties on the traffic safety board, traffic safety committee, I should say, even though I really enjoy it. So I just want to throw that out there. Does anybody want to express a desire to be somewhere where they're not, or somewhere where they'd like to be?
I would love to step into the traffic safety committee in the safest way possible.
Great. Anyone else interested in traffic safety committee? No? Well, I'm going to write Daniel's name in, and then we'll, I don't know, take it as a slate if we need a formal motion on that. So going back to the top, we have a capital grant review board that meets as needed. And there is 2 slots. I'm happy to serve on one of those slots. Is anybody else interested in that? Any background? I'll toss it to Peter to give us a little description. Ian? Go ahead.
It meets very, very rarely, hasn't met actually in several years, but it's there in case there is a proposed new capital grant funded project that would add to the maintenance costs of the town.
Great. So I'm throwing my name on there, but if anyone else wants to join me there.
Yeah, I'll join on that too. I mean, I'd like to have another as well.
Certainly, that's not enough. The next one down is the Rental Housing Improvement Program Loan Committee. I believe Brandy currently serves on this. I could be wrong, but she's not here to speak for herself. So does someone have an interest in this committee?
I also have an interest in this committee.
Great. Now, I think it's also, that's a meet as needed situation too.
Yeah.
But this one and the next one, I believe we're gonna have some activity on, since we're all being positive and think we're gonna get through this in the next couple of months. We hope. I think there's gonna be some definite need there. So if Ian is unchallenged, I'll write his name down.
You know,
And next is,
I just had a thought that might be, this one and the next one might be quite busy in the coming months. And if Brandy is still interested, you know, maybe they would like to share those responsibilities.
May I just offer some perspective about the difference between the two? I quite agree that the Small Business Assistance Program Committee is likely to be very busy during the recovery from COVID-19. I'm not sure that the Rental Housing Committee will be, because that's funding specific to making improvements in rental housing properties, as opposed to sort of sustaining or growing a business in rental housing. And so I think we actually may enter a period in the second half of this year when it's less likely that landlords are going to be in a position to be investing additional funds in the physical plant of the rental properties. So I think the two actually represent something quite different in terms of the potential unique impact this year of COVID-19.
thanks, Peter. Good point. Where were we?
The small
So
business
Ian is right. I have Ian's name down for the Rental Housing Improvement Program Loan Committee. So who is interested in the Small Business Assistance Loan Program Committee? Liz has raised her hand. Okay. That's great. I'm getting a nod and a dark stare from Daniel. So that's going to go with.
This is my neutral face.
You got that Negan.
Neutral face. My stare.
Thanks, Liz. So Brandy, unfortunately, isn't able to chime in, but that's quite all right. We can always adjust things if we have to later. Windham Regional Commission is a term from April 1st to March 31st. April 1st, 2020 to, yeah.
Yeah, on that one, I'm sorry that we did this, but we've created a confusion here, but we've got a separate agenda item at the next one because it's likely to involve you appointing people from outside the select board. So, so we probably should just skip over Windham Regional during this item and deal with that in a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that, but I was doing it in a very overly verbose manner. Thank you. The next one is the Windham Solid Waste Management District Board of Supervisors. If memory serves, last year we elected Patrick to serve on that, and he's been serving very well and faithfully. So if the board wants to continue in that manner, that can happen. And there can also be a board member backup, which might be a nice thing if somebody feels lightly used. Could be me.
Could be Brandy.
Or if anyone
waste
wants to just draft Brandy.
I thought Peter.
Yeah, we could draft Brandy and see how she feels about that.
Backup in the past.
It's been done multiple ways. There've been select board members as member. There's been select board members as backup. Patrick has been the backup when it's been a select board member in the primary role. And he was the principal person this past year. I honestly don't remember whether I was backup this past year or whether a select board member was. Patrick attended all of the meetings. So it's really sort of, if you have a particular interest and you'd like to be involved in the regional solid waste decision making, it's an opportunity for a board member, but it's something that Patrick has expertise in and has represented the town well in if you prefer to delegate it.
I think my time would be wasted.
Be a solid waste
Okay.
of time.
Yes.
Well, I think since Brandy can't speak for herself, I don't think we should draft her for that. We'll just go with Peter as the alternate. Does everybody feel okay about that?
Yes.
And at the bottom of the sheet is a good reminder note that all board members are ex officio members to the Board of Civil Authority and the Board of Abatement. I just wanted to point out that the Board of Abatement might be very, very busy
Yes.
this year.
Yes.
For better or
Because of
worse.
challenges paying property taxes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. So, board, just Ian, so you know, we are always included on Hillary's emails for those meetings, and it's always encouraged that we can make it. I've made a few, but I haven't been able to make all of those meetings. It's great
Well,
when
you
we
know,
can, though, because
Ian's an old hand at that.
go ahead, listen.
Mm-hmm.
I said
Yeah.
Ian's an old hand at that.
As a justice of the peace, I've had the opportunity to sit on the board of abatements and the Board of Civil Authority. So yeah, I would definitely encourage all of the rest of the select board to be there. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yep. Great. You hear that, Daniel? Be there.
Oh, I've been.
There was a difference of opinion, like in past boards, about whether or not the board should serve. But I do believe if it's possible, it's the right thing to do.
Oh.
Any other comments on that? Do it.
No.
Peter, do you think, see, I feel at a loss. I would turn to Jan at this point and say, do we need a formal motion?
You do not need a formal motion on this. It's sufficient. Maybe I'll just recite back to you, make sure that we've got it written down right. But what I have is Daniel for the Traffic Safety Committee, Tim and Ian for the Capital Grants Review Board, Ian for the Rental Housing Loan Committee, Liz for the Small Business Loan Committee, and delegating to Patrick and me for representing the town's interest at the Solid Waste District. Is that what you intended? Okay. Yeah, so you're good to move on then to the Windham Regional appointment, which is something that actually does require a motion of the board in order to comply with Windham Regional's requirements.
Great. And I don't know if Sue's still on. We don't absolutely need you, but
Oh,
can you
here
hear
she
me?
is.
Always needs to.
Sue. Yeah. Sorry to make you
I'm
hang
still
on,
here.
and sorry if I'm breaking up, but okay, thank you. Do you want to fill us in?
Sure. So for the past year, myself and Tom Mozakowski, who is a planning commission member, have been the Windham Regional Commission appointees for the town of Brattleboro. We're both happy to continue serving. I sit on a couple of their different committees, Brownfields and their Planning Coordination Committee. I actually don't know if Tom is on any of the committees, but he actively attends their full commission meetings, which I sometimes have conflicts with Conservation Commission. So we worked well to kind of cover the meetings and participate with the Windham Regional Commission. So we're both happy to serve if you would like to appoint us.
Great, thank you for your service. And it certainly would please me. How about the rest of the board?
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
So whenever someone would like to make that motion.
I'll make a motion. This will be my first online motion, I think. Let's see. See if I can get this right. Okay, I move to appoint Sue Fillion and Tom Mosakowski as representatives from the town of Brattleboro to the Windham Regional Commission for the period from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Daniel has moved to appoint Sue Fillion and Tom Masakowski as representatives from the town of Brattleboro to the Windham Regional Commission for the period of April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, unanimous. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
All right. If anybody doesn't have any last minute brainstorms, I think we've come to the end. I just wanted to say, happy Passover to everyone celebrating out there. And also that the Easter Bunny is coming, I hear, on Friday. You could check out the Recreation and Parks info for that. Something to do with a vehicle parade again with the Easter Bunny. Does anybody? I don't know why I was compelled to do that.
Where can you go from there?
Yeah.
I'll be coloring virtual eggs.
There's other activities as well. I think they're also doing a exercise thing.
Yes.
A bunny hop?
It's always good. I'm sorry?
A bunny hop?
I'm not sure what it
thing?
is. No, they're leading exercise groups or something as part of the holiday experience. I'm not sure.
Would you like me
Clearly,
to? It's
yes,
oh, sure.
Peter, please explain.
It's one of the ways in which the Recreation Department is trying to help families and particularly kids to stay active and stay engaged with each other in a safe manner remotely, and through digital connection. And so they're offering online gymnastics classes where kids are doing the exercises and activities at home, along with the folks who are leading the class online. And there's in today's report, I'll leave it in there again for tomorrow, make it easy for people to see. Today's daily update from the town, we put in the different times. It's on Wednesdays and Fridays, and there's a different time of day depending on the age group of the child.
Well, I did read in the news today.
It's not directly related to Easter or.
I did read in the news today that in New Zealand, the Prime Minister determined that the Easter Bunny was an essential service.
Good. Good. Candy is essential. We all know that.
I guess on a
Daniel has
more
something to say.
serious note, I mean, this is Holy Week, and many of our congregations, well, all of our congregations are now happening online. And
Right.
from the clergy that I know, this is a really powerful and also really challenging moment. People's Passover Seders will happen virtually. That's really hard. People's church services are happening virtually, and I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just another kind of wrinkle in this moment. And I wish everybody well for this, for this week of holidays.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that.
We all support that. Thank you, Daniel. All right. Well, does anyone have a motion?
I'd love to move to adjourn. What do you think?
All those
2
in
hands
favor
up.
of adjournment?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.